Before we get anywhere, know that this video absolutely contains theory crafting about a character I dreamt of. Such a character couldn't possibly exist as they fit too well into my favorite comp, that being Welt sustain. But know that you have been warned. If you watch this video before the 2.1 livestream, you may be in for surprises. For the people who cannot stand the sound of my voice, don't worry, I can't either. The short answer is Acheron's top 3 comps are Welt sustain with Bronya first, Welt sustain with Sparkle second, and Welt sustain with Ruanmei third. I should have the timestamps going in so you can skip to those if you so like. If you think I am wrong, do the calculations first and yap later. Don't give me your feels crafting or thoughts, just prove me wrong and then come back to me. To elaborate on what I am doing, I'm comparing all of Acheron's comps to each other and showcasing the comps damage over a 5-cycle period, that being 550 AV with various builds, both with and without Acheron's signature. I shall start from weakest to strongest and go from there. When I talk about the comp, I will go through everything that stands out and is worth mentioning. So if you see your favorite comp, please listen to everything I have to say so you understand what I have done, why I did what I did, and what you will be getting into. The disclaimers are, the builds are lowballed, so you will have better stats, but they are done to get realistic understanding of the comp's damage. Your Acheron should be doing more damage here. Second, there are many assumptions made that I couldn't address within a timely manner. If you want me to create a dedicated video on a specific comp and go into detail that I could go here, please ask in the comments and I will go over everything about that comp in said detail. Finally, the calcs I'm showing you are provided by Jumbo Pop and myself. Once again, he has helped me immensely. I have done calcs of my own and I've gotten the same results, but not only are they not nearly as organized and pretty, but our values are different as we assume different stats for Acheron. Thankfully, he let me use his sheets and calcs for the video, so please do check out his channel. He does mostly gameplay runs and does cool stuff like seal max points, pure fiction runs, and 0 cycles if you're interested in that. Now then, 2 separate calcs and rotations were done, one with Acheron's signature and one without. If you're already unaware, her sig is a drastic increase in damage, about 25% on her. So in almost all cases, her sig towers above running a different comp. Do please note that, as if you haven't already heard, it has been a course for this course, and it isn't unwarranted as there is no good 4-star alternative aside from Goodnight Sleep Well or any other free-to-play alternative for Acheron at all. For her S0, for her calculations without her signature, I will assume S5 Goodnight Sleep Well. If you have fewer refinements or do not have Goodnight Sleep Well at all, expect much less damage. Now, first and last place comes to DOT. Now, there's a disclaimer right away because these numbers are bloated. Got to start with my weakness first. They are bloated due to Acheron, Kafka, and Black Swan scaling every turn, which is obviously impossible. Apologies, dot enthusiasts, but seriously, this is supposed to be an Acheron video, and both Black Swan and Kafka demand your full attention to get results, and again, Acheron takes away from that. Kafka is on S5 Pearls, and Black Swan is on S5 Eyes of Prayer. Yes, these are not the most ideal weapons on them, and their SIGs respectively would be a much further increase in damage, but it wouldn't be enough to bridge the gap. The reason Kafka is on Pearls instead of a DPS weapon is because it was better calculated to have it increase the rest of the team's damage, Acheron's damage in particular, instead of her own. You may have seen some other sheets showing otherwise, but those assume impossible things like the enemy having 168 speed or more, which heavily favors DOT damage due to enemies acting more and therefore taking DOT damage faster, and multiple enemies with infinite HP to farm Black Swan's Arcana DOT to deal blast and farm off those trash mobs. Furthermore, all these calcs do not include the enemy being weak to lightning in order to show how Acheron performs, regardless of enemy weakness. While this is quite unfair to Dot, who get a large portion of their damage from Break Dot, it had to be done here. I do completely understand if this is not to your liking and you are not satisfied with this, as I aren't either. It's due to their great scaling that with multiple enemies you see that their 3 target damage does in fact skyrocket, and that is due to Black Swan taking a sizable increase in the team's overall damage due to, as I said earlier, more enemies for the Blast Arcana to farm. If you have a signature in all of these characters, their overall damage would increase further, but I sadly will not include a version of this comp with Acheron's signature, as I just do not believe you should run this comp if you care for her damage. Once again, apologies. I shall try to do better. The team functions quite well with Black Swan able to apply debuffs on every attack, and Kafka able to do the same not only with her regular attacks due to pearls, but also with the inclusion of her follow-up able to apply shock. They do provide a substantial amount of stacks for Acheron to ult quickly, where you are simply spread too thin between all your 3 DPSs, so your overall damage drops. It would benefit you more to run Runmei instead of Acheron here to maximize a certain aspect of this comp's damage. Second to last place goes to Sparkle, Pela, and Gepard. Sparkle is 160 speed on past and future, Pela is on pearls, and Gepard is on trend. With Sparkle's skill point and advance forward that allows Acheron to mimic 160 speed, she's able to get off a respectable amount of ultimates, second only to a true double Nihility team. With Sparkle's incredible crit damage buffs and the like, she does fire off a lot of damage, but it does not keep up with double Nihility, even with the perpetual 100% crit damage buff and other things Sparkle provides, due to not only fulfilling the debuff Nihility not fulfilling the double Nihility quota, but because a double Nihility comp fires off more ultimates, and ultimates are where the vast majority of Acheron's damage lies. Attack boots are better on Acheron than speed boots with speedier supports, that being 150 speed plus, because giving her extra speed doesn't directly equate to more ults faster due to how her stacking gimmick works. It is more valuable to run more speed on your supports than Acheron. Even with E2, it's better to run attack boots unless you are running a Bronya variation comp. Acheron scales very well off attack due to how stacked her damage percentage and crit damage is due to her traces and relics respectively. With Sparkle, you can expect around 5 ultimates, each averaging around 190,000 single target damage, alongside having more skill activations than nearly any other team variation. With Sparkle and Pela, you're able to keep buffs up consistently and almost perpetually due to the high uptimes, and not have to worry about holding onto ultimates like you would for Bronya team comps, as Sparkle's crit damage buff essentially never drops. Finally, a preservation character like Gepard or Fire MC provides an obscene amount of stacks while using Trent. You could use a character like Fujuan, but unlike Gepard or FMC, they do not have solid aggro increase without using a weapon, meaning the average amount of stacks they provide is far, far less. FMC is better at providing stacks than even Gepard, but there's a very solid chance you will run into sustain issues with them. I absolutely endorse this comp, as you could end up providing Acheron a ridiculous amount of ultimates in content like Pure Fiction, Simulated Universe, or maybe MRC if the enemy summons or acts many times. But I will once again warn you that there's a very real sustain issue that you will come across, and there will be times the fireman character will not work. Please acknowledge this. While this comp is worse than double Nihility in all aspects against all enemies, it is incredibly comfortable and might even be better than double Nihility if your Gwynaifan is not E6. Now, next up is the golden standard that everyone is scared or worried about, and that is double Nihility with Gwynaifan and Pela. Pela is on Pearls, Gwyn is on Tutorial, and Gepard is once again on Trend. The advantages this comp has is owning the highest number of Acheron ultimates cast within 5 cycles, that being 5 to 6. All characters apply debuffs on the team, and incredibly easily at that, while having high uptime on their debuffs. The weaknesses are that Gwyn has ramp up time before she reaches max stacks on Firekiss, and requires E6 to maximize the benefits of her E6. This is mostly handled with the first wave due to her innate advance forward, allowing you to reach max stacks within the cycle. But on the second wave, you once again will have a drop in damage, while Gwyn has to reapply her Firekiss stacks. Despite these problems, I would say it's the best Acheron team, and the one that would be the most stable Acheron team as well. Reliable 58% defense threat from Pela, and Pearl's essentially permanently active. 30.6% vulnerability from Gwyn's Firekiss, and Trend on Gepard applying consistent burns and providing stacks for Acheron. There isn't really much to say here. With Gwyn and Pela at 147 speed and 160 speed respectively, you're able to provide stacks very easily to Acheron to allow her to ultimate every cycle, if not do that with Trend working overtime. Do know that it isn't likely you will be able to ult with Acheron every cycle in other comps due to the requirement of having to apply 9 debuffs through 9 different actions every single time. Outside of this comp, that just really isn't feasible. Trend works overtime to make this possible, and Pela and Gwyn applying debuffs on their actions and their ults help contribute towards this as well, each taking 8 to 9 turns within 5 cycles, and not counting their ult, they would essentially be provided Acheron with an ult of their own, of her own, which is how they're able to provide so many ults to Acheron. This would be the best comp that isn't well sustained, but the next one is a bit weird. The final comp, before we get onto the heavy hitters, is Bronya, Pela, and Gepard. Bronya is on Past and Future, Pela is on Pearls, and Gepard is on Trend. This comp surpasses double Nihility, albeit barely, because it's essentially an upgraded version of the Sparkle comp. Bronya increased the amount of turns Acheron has more than Sparkle by an amazing grand total of 1. But also do remember her buffs are better because damage percentage is more valuable than crit damage due to the abundance of crit damage characters have. Although I am saying this, her numbers are kind of all over the place due to her awful buff uptimes. Many times you'll be without her ult buff, many times you'll be without her skill buff, as this is hyperspeed Bronya to make up for the skill points. Many times you will have both, and many times you will have none. She was a headache to calculate, really. And since this doesn't account for toughness broken enemies, with her weird uptime, she might not be able to capitalize over it, unlike other teams with almost perpetual uptime on their offensive damage mods, which absolutely would have her lag behind other comps. Furthermore, often you will find yourself holding onto Acheron's ult so that you may use it with Bronya's buffs, and this could lead you to an uncomfortable situation. Again, as the simulation over 5 cycle assumes the enemy is not weak to lightning, even though Acheron has Omni Toughness Shred in her ult, she looks to be better here, and like always, Gepard with Trent is carrying with the debuff application front, allowing Bronya to match the amount of ultimates Sparkle's team comp provides. Overall, I would suggest double Nihility over this comp if you are not running Welt Sustain, but it undoubtedly has firepower behind it and it should not be underestimated. Now, finally, onto the real stars of the show. You can consider double Nihility to be the standards we are moving forward from. In third place, we have Welt Sustain with Ruanmei, Pela, and Welt. Ruanmei is on Mesh and calcs with her 180% break effect quarter, and build with permanent uptime. Pela is on Pearls and Welt is on Tutorial. Their builds will remain the same throughout, Pela and Welt particularly. The reason a Ruanmei variation with one Nihility character was not considered is because Ruanmei's hypercarry buffs pale in comparison to Sparkle's or Bronya's, and Sparkle was already providing less damage than double Nihility anyway, so the comparison would be unneeded. This is around 12 to 15% better than double Nihility due to the fact that Ruanmei's buffs outvalue Gwynaifan's vulnerability, and on top of that, Welt contributes damage of his own. Ruanmei provides 25% resistance shred and break efficiency, which I will talk about later in far detail. Welt's personal damage is absolutely noticeable throughout this period, and even with a horrible build, assuming you do manage to get him to 160 or 170 speed as I am showing, his damage is more than enough to kill something in his own right. Due to all these factors, Ruanmei Welt Sustain towers above double Nihility. Now, just to make sure we are on the same page, Welt Sustain was not designed for long fights, nor was it designed for 0 cycles. Pela or a stronger Nihility sub DPS would be preferable. What this comp does is provide a far stronger sustain than usual due to many reasons. I've already posted a guide on how to actually use Welt Sustain with all the tips and tricks. Check that out if you want to learn and prepare in advance, because Ruanmei doesn't even come close to what Sparkle Welt Sustain and Bronya Welt Sustain provide raw offense-wise. Do please note, however, that you have less ultimates here, and this is because, while you do get a Nihility character, a debuff applier as a sustain character, Trend provides just that much debuffs for Acheron to spam. Even though the overall damage is much worse with other teams than with Welt Sustain, despite the decrease in ultimates that Welt Sustain has, if you want to use Acheron's ult more often for double Nihility with a Trend user is the way to go, and this makes special sense in pure fiction. Now on to second place, and that belongs to Sparkle, Pela, and Welt, with Sparkle on Past and Future. Now, well, before barely had Acheron deal more damage than double Nihility, only about 13% more damage from Acheron overall, before Welt's own damage got factored in. This is where it becomes a fact that Welt Sustain is her strongest comp. First of all, these numbers look absurd. I mean, it's almost double the previous Sparkle comp, but that's because this works in a very simple way. With Welt, Acheron's Nihility passive kicks in at its fullest, automatically increasing Acheron's personal damage by 1.4, which math-wise is 1.6, the new multiplier, over 1.15, the old multiplier. Then we add on Welt's vulnerability through his ultimate, further increasing Acheron's damage by 1.12, and then finally add on top Welt's personal damage. Yeah, the difference between Welt sustained comps and non-sustained comps are just that big. He perfectly plays towards Acheron passes, contributes his own, and the team helps each other by giving Acheron more turns, allowing Welt to do damage essentially for free and keeping the team alive in the process. Now, I will go further into Welt sustained stuff near the end, but let's move on to the final comp. The final comp is obviously Bronya, for the same reasons as before and as mentioned before. Your damage would increase this stat drastically. You get access to Acheron's full passive with Welt supportive abilities. However, this comp would be very much less comfortable without Sparkle. And the damage increase is debatable due to Welt requiring to basic a lot more due to the SP issues you come across, despite using Bronya's Sig here to help provide skill points. There will be skill point issues, and there might be comfort issues with this comp, despite it reaping the most benefits and having the most firepower. I would really only recommend this comp for this team for people who are trying to min-max their damage over the Sparkle variation, as it's otherwise debatably worth it. As you can see from the rotation, Welt is using a lot more basics, but as I've said before, Acheron has the most amount of actions here, and is why this is her highest damaging comp. Now, that was all without her Sig. If we do include her Sig, the damage gets pretty funny. See, the gap only widens, and that's because her signature does more for well-sustained teams that were not ulting as much as other teams. Don't worry, the double Nihility team comp still ults more, managing an extra ultimate with her signature, but so do the Sparkle Bronya team comp variations. And if you didn't already notice, well-sustained team comps actually do more damage than double Nihility or just any other team comps that's not zero cycle, period. And if you didn't already notice, Welt Sustain team comps actually do more damage than double Nihility or just any other team comp that's not zero cycle centered, whether Welt Sustain has Good Night Sleep Bowl or Acheron signature, as you can see. Now then, you have the calcs, you have the rotations, you should know why Welt Sustain is a best comp, but let me walk you through some things. First, Welt Sustain will be usurped eventually. They will absolutely release a character that will fulfill Welt's role here and do it better. So everyone crying about how it's not viable can stop doom posting and be silent. You can just wait for that character's release to fix your skill issue. Second, we are really lacking in the debuffs department. Silverwolf works better than Gwyn, as you see in the single target scenarios, but lags behind in multi-target, which is why I didn't go depth into her. But with future Nihility releases, we will get an AoE debuff not unlike a 5-star Pela that would make Acheron stronger. Acheron can only age brilliantly with time, and if you feel unsatisfied with her currently, and you cannot make Welt Sustain work, or you do not have Welt, you can wait to see what new characters are introduced before her rerun. Third, the comps have been simulated, and the rotations are done here are just theory. Obviously, in game, and with Welt Sustain in particular, things will change, but this is assuming atrocious stats. 100 crit rate, 160 crit damage on Acheron after all of her buffs and crit buffs have registered with Goodnight Sleep Ball, and 196 with her signature, not including Bronya's and other Harmony supports stat increases. Fourth, if you are wondering where the meta characters like Jingliu and Dan in Bible Lune fit in, with Bronya and Ruane for Jingliu, she fits in firmly stronger than double Nihility. There's no doubt. And Dan with Sparkle and Ruane fit in around the same, but both are weaker than the Ruane Welt Sustain variation, albeit only by a little bit. Fifth, and this is the most important one, I cannot say which Welt Sustain comp is better. Runmei is and will be by far the most comfortable Welt sustain comp. If you saw my Welt sustain guide, you will know why. Runmei provides toughness break efficiency, allows you to extend weakness break durations, and with Acheron, you're able to forego enemy toughness. One of the biggest problems you might have encountered with Welt sustain is not being able to toughness break the enemy. With Runmei, and if you add Silver Wolf instead of Pela, you will not have that problem, by which the only problem you will have is CCing enemies, but Welt will be on tutorial due to other allies being on pearls, which means his ult uptime would be substantially higher than usual. While this rings true for Sparkle and Bronya variations as well, neither provide the increased toughness break efficiency that might allow Acheron to devour an enemy's elites, bosses, whoever it is, devour their toughness in a few skills and an ultimate. Raw damage wise, Bronya is better than Sparkle, but once again, comfort wise, I would recommend Sparkle over her. As you saw with the Bronya's rotation, she doesn't allow Welt to skill very much, and even with tutorial, such low ult uptime might not get you through the increasing difficulty of the endgame. I cannot recommend Bronya's variation easily knowing this, but do know it is Acheron's strongest comp right now, damage wise. That should be everything. Acheron was practically built for Welt sustain, and I find it hilarious because it makes it feel like everyone doom posting simply has a skill issue. There is absolutely valid counter arguments to be made, don't get me wrong. Enemies with CC resistance will be a problem and reduce the damage output from Welt as he has to trade off said damage for effect hit rate. Multi-phase bosses, as per usual, will always be a problem, and enemies increasing HP pool means that maybe Welt sustain just doesn't last long enough before the enemy kills you before you can kill them. All of these are valid counter arguments. But if the comp does work, there is no contest. I've made it work so far. You can see my videos, I've made it work so far. And I will be the first to tell you if Welt sustain is impossible to be run, because I value honesty over idealism. But if it works, then everyone has been wrong all along, and I won't let any of you live it down. Thank you for watching. Subscribing would forevermore change my life, so I would greatly appreciate it. I should slow down on the talk stuff because these videos take too long to upload. Expect the Sparkle Welt sustain variation soon, and then probably live stream stuff. You guys have increased my subscriber count by 10 times. 10 times. I truly can't thank you enough. Thank you all. Thank you truly.